Hello friends, I am Dr. Sarika, Assistant Professor in Pediatrics at Sardar Patel Medical College, Bikaner, and I am here with my another video. Uh, and today I have come with the most hot topic, most talked about topic, that is COVID-19 and children. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the virus, what is the incidence among children, infection and transmission, clinical presentation, severity of illness, clinical criteria for testing, lab and radiography of COVID-19, and what is the management. So, as you know very well that this coronavirus disease 19 is caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, that is SARS-CoV-2, and disease was first reported in December 2019 from Wuhan, Hubei province of China, and WHO declared it as a public health emergency of international concern, that is FEIC, on January 30, 2020, and WHO declared it as a global pandemic on 11th of March 2020. And you know very well that this delay in declaring it as a FEIC as well as pandemic, WHO was very much criticized. So as of incidence, because of the prioritization of testing in adults and those with serious illnesses, the true incidence in children is not known. Cases are very fewer and milder in pediatric age group, and hospitalization rate is also lower as compared to adults. Now, infection and transmission. Recent evidences suggest that children likely have a same or higher viral load in their nasopharynx as compared to adults, and they can spread virus very effectively in households or in close group settings. And it is a possibility because the schools have been closed, there is a reduction, very much reduction in transmission of the virus among children. The incubation period is 2 to 14 days, average being 6 days, and period of infectivity is 2 days prior to 8 days after onset of symptoms. And the disease spreads by aerosol transmission. So coming to the pathogenesis of COVID-19. So you can see here very well that this is the respiratory epithelial cell having receptor of angiotensin converting enzyme type 2 receptor, and this virus binds to this receptor, and this is the actually the entry point of the virus, and it leads to activation of T cells, and those T cells in turn activates the various cells of the immune system of our body, that is B cells, macrophages, natural killer cells, and it activates, there is expansion of the T cell group. Okay, and that activation of all the cells leads to the uh, release of various cytokines in the body, of which GM-CSF, interleukin 6, interleukin 12, interleukin 1 beta, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and there is a cytokine storm in the body, and this storm actually leads to these various clinical manifestations of the disease, that is the most common and primarily the pneumonia, acute respiratory distress syndrome patient may have, they may be cardiac failure, kidneys may be affected, and brain may also be affected, and person or child may go into a multi-organ dysfunction syndrome. So how the child presents to us? Most of the children, up to 45% children may be asymptomatic, and most of them and most of others are also having mild symptoms. And common features are related to respiratory symptoms, but children may have gastrointestinal symptoms. The common features are fever and cough, along with fatigue, headache, and myalgia, nasal congestion or rhinorrhea. There may be anosmia and ageusia, that is loss of taste and loss of smell. Sore throat may be there, shortness of breath or difficulty in breathing may be there, abdominal pain, diarrhea and vomiting are some of the gastrointestinal features, and child may have loss of appetite. So most of the children are presenting with these symptoms. So because the symptoms are very non-specific, so it's a challenging task for us to screen the children for testing. So now coming to the case definition, ICMR has defined the cases, and it has categorized the cases in three, that is suspected case, probable case, and confirmed case. So when do we say the case is one, suspect one? So if any child or any person is having features of acute respiratory illness like fever with at least one of these, means cough and shortness of breath, and it is having or they are having history of travel to or residence in a location reporting community transmission of COVID-19 disease during last 14 days, or if the patient is having symptoms of respiratory illness and has been in contact with a confirmed or probable case of COVID-19 in last 14 days before onset of symptoms, or if the child is having severe acute respiratory illness, means he's having fast breathing or hypoxemia, or along with fever, and there is no other explanation for the symptoms, then again it becomes a suspected case. Then when we say the case is one, a probable one, if suspect case for whom testing for COVID-19 is inconclusive, or the test could not be performed because of any reason, then we put them in probable cases. Then confirmed case, irrespective of the sign and symptoms, if laboratory confirmation with RT-PCR of COVID-19 is there, then it is a confirmed case. Now coming to the severity, though the disease in children is mild in most of the children, but those who are having underlying medical illnesses like diabetes, asthma, chronic lung disease, sickle cell anemia, or immunosuppressed because of cancer chemotherapy or on long-term steroid therapy, or child is having some genetic, metabolic, neurologic, or congenital heart disease, then again the case may become a severe one. Okay, so here high index of suspicion is very essential, and some children may progress to the multi-system inflammatory syndrome temporarily related to coronavirus. So that is a separate entity and is being most talked about these days. So I will be coming with another video in which I will be explaining about the MISC, but here let me explain what are the mild, moderate, and severe cases. So, if the child presents with uncomplicated upper respiratory infection symptoms and there is no hypoxemia, then it is a mild case. If child is having dyspnea or fast breathing and or hypoxemia, means hypoxemia in moderate category when it is less than when oxygen saturation is less than 94%, means it is between 90 to 94%, or having fast breathing, so that is a moderate case. Fast breathing, when do we say the breathing is fast? If in less than 2 months of age it is more than 60 breaths per minute, in 2 to 11 months if it is more than 50 breaths per minute, and in 1 to 5 years of age if it is more than 40 breaths per minute, then it is fast breathing. So if either of these are present, then the case is one of a moderate COVID. Then if child is having cough or difficulty in breathing plus at least one of these, that is central cyanosis or oxygen saturation less than 90%, severe respiratory distress in the form of grunting and chest indrawing, retractions are there, signs of pneumonia with any of the following danger signs like inability to breastfeed or drink, lethargy or unconsciousness, or having convulsions, then it is a case of severe COVID. So diagnosis is exclusively clinical. Chest imaging can exclude complications. So to label the patient as having mild, moderate, or severe disease, the diagnosis is exclusively clinical. Now, when we have to go for testing, okay, so if child is having symptoms of COVID-19, then certainly we have to go for testing. If child is not having symptoms but was in close contact with a documented case of COVID-19. Close contact means was in contact with a distance of 6 feet or less for a total of 15 minutes or more. Okay, so contact time 15 minutes and the distance 6 feet. If time more than 15 minutes and duration, this less than 6 feet distance, then it is labeled as close contact. So if child had close contact with the COVID case, or in a high transmission zone, if the person has attended a gathering, private gathering, in which more than 10 people were there, and the universal mask wearing and physical distancing were not followed, then also we have to go for a testing. Then school-aged children should be prioritized for viral testing if they have sign or symptoms of COVID-19 and have a close contact, history of close contact with a person with laboratory confirmed or probable SARS-CoV-2 infection, or if there is increased likelihood of exposure, which include living in or traveling to a community with substantial transmission. Okay, and there is a priority for viral testing in school age children if there are no symptoms but child had a close contact. Then if the child had close contact to someone with COVID, and we test him and the child is found negative, then despite child being negative, we have to keep the child in quarantine for 14 days. Okay, so this is also very important. If close contact is there, and uh, close contact is there, but child is found negative on testing, then also we have to keep the child in quarantine for 14 days. Then there are some conditions where we should think something else. It, though the COVID is an important diagnosis these days, but we should keep in mind the other diagnosis also. So if the child has symptoms of COVID-19 but was not in close contact with a person with COVID, and if a child does not have any increased likelihood of exposure to COVID-19, then he or she should be evaluated for other disease processes depending on the local epidemiology. Like in these days, we should also rule out dengue and malaria in children. Okay. Then what samples do we collect? Generally, we are going for the nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal swabs. And besides that, we can take nasal mid-terminate swab, anterior nair swab, nasopharyngeal wash or aspirate, or nasal wash or aspirate we can take. Saliva specimen can also be taken. Then we transfer the those swab sticks immediately to a sterile transport tube containing 2 to 3 ml of either viral transport medium or amines transport medium or phosphate buffered saline or sterile saline. Okay, and those patients, only those patients who are having productive cough, in that condition we can collect sputum also, but induction of sputum is not recommended at all. Then what tests do we perform on these samples? We go for a real-time PCR for diagnosis of COVID-19. Antibody test is not recommended for diagnosis nowadays. And depending on local epidemiology and clinical symptoms, we should think of some other diseases also, like influenza or other respiratory viruses. Malaria, dengue and typhoid should also be considered in the differential diagnosis as per the clinical condition and history of exposure. And if child is a case of COVID-19 is confirmed, then and is a severe one, then we should also get blood cultures done, ideally prior to initiation of antimicrobial therapy. Then what laboratory findings we find generally in pediatric age group? We find a lymphopenia, the liver and muscle enzymes and LDH are increased, myoglobin and creatinine kinase isoenzyme levels are increased, C-reactive protein is increased, ESR, procalcitonin, which all these three are markers of inflammation, they are increased in COVID cases. And also as it also affects the coagulation system, so D dimer is also elevated in these, may be elevated in these children. Then what do we find on imaging? In chest X-ray, generally we find bilaterally distributed peripheral and subpleural ground glass opacities and consolidation. On CT scan, more refined picture we find, and there may be ground glass opacities, consolidation with the surrounding halo sign, bilateral or local patchy shadowing, interstitial pneumonia we may find. So this I would like to show you the picture here of a chest X-ray. So this A is a chest X-ray which is showing diffuse areas of peribronchial thickening. So here you can see this is a bronchus and peribronchial thickening is there, and there is slight the perihilar prominence is there. And okay, and in the C, this is a X-ray of 10-year-old girl with patchy bilateral ground glass opacities. You can see very well these arrows are showing the ground glass opacities. So these are the X-ray findings which are commonly found in COVID cases. And now the upper three CT of chest are showing the pneumonia in children. This A is a female of 14-year age, and scattered ground glass opacities you can see very well. And in this B is a male child showing consolidation with a hollow sign in inferior lobe of the left side of the lung. And here this is a CT scan of 1-year-old child, and there is diffuse consolidation and ground glass opacities you can very well see here. Now coming to the management, uh, supportive treatment is also very important along with the antiviral treatment, but most of the mild to moderate cases are treated with the supportive treatment only. So bed rest is very essential, as is essential in other viral illnesses. As we go on telling our patients that yes, please have a proper bed rest, then adequate calorie intake is very essential along with proper hydration. Fever has to be taken care with the paracetamol, antitussive for cough. Oxygen therapy has to be given only if hypoxemia is there. Antibiotics are to be started only if bacterial co-infection is there. Then coming to the antiviral therapy, which is actually full of, I think, confusions whether we should go for the antiviral therapy or we should not. A little bit confusion is there in my mind also, but I have tried to try to read and try to put the things here so that it becomes clear to everyone. So remdesivir has been approved for use in children more than 12 years of age who are weighing at least 40 kgs. And in these cases, means more than 12 years of age who are weighing at least 40 kg, the dose is 200 milligram IV over 30 to 120 minutes on day 1, and this is followed by half of its dose, that is 100 milligrams IV on day 2 to 5. If there is sufficient clinical improvement, we can stop it over after 5 days, but if not, then we can extend the treatment up to 10 days. Then in this we have to monitor the patient with the renal function test, liver function test, and prothrombin time. If and we have to also go for a renal function test before starting the treatment, and if estimated GFR is less than 30 ml per minute, then certainly we can't give this medication. In children less than 12 years and between 3.5 to less than 40 kgs, it is only available through emergency use authorization. And in these cases, dose is 5 milligram per kilogram IV given over 30 to 120 minutes on day 1 and half of its dose over day 2 to day 5. And if there is no clinical improvement, we can extend the treatment to total 10 days. And here also we have to monitor the patient with RFT, LFT, and prothrombin time. Then hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine have been talked much, but both these drugs are not recommended except in clinical trials. Then role of steroids, which are very commonly being used in adult patients. Here I would like to say a recovery study was done, but most of the patients in this study were actually the adult patients. So for uh, for for steroids in children, it is said that dexamethasone may be beneficial in pediatric patients with COVID-19, those who require mechanical ventilation. And in those who are on other forms of supplemental oxygen support, then case by case basis we have to decide, it is clinician's discretion whether they have to use it or not. Additional studies are really needed for role of steroids in pediatric COVID. Then these are the drugs which are actually under trial: niclosamide, rentatolimod, betadine, and for hydroxycytidine, bemacentinib, umifenovir. These are really a fascinating names, but are under trial. None has been approved yet. Ametine and these androquinol and all that. Then coming to the complications, the pediatric patients may have sometimes respiratory failure. They may develop acute respiratory distress syndrome, myocarditis may be there, shock may be there, acute renal failure may be there, coagulopathy may develop, multi-organ system failure may be there because of that cytokine storm. Intussusception and diabetic ketoacidosis are also have been reported, and we also had one patient with intussusception and was found to be COVID positive. And the one and most talked about complication is multisystem inflammatory syndrome in children, temporarily related to COVID-19. So these are the various complications. Now, what is the role of a pediatrician besides the treatment which we are giving? So here again we have to emphasize the importance of proper hand hygiene, social distancing, and wearing masks when in public to every well patient or the patient who is coming to us for other consultations. Then information on stress and coping during the pandemic in their regular anticipatory guidance with children and their families is very important, because now, because if one contract the disease, if one contracts the disease which is really spreading all over the world and affecting so many people, then obviously it becomes a stress for the parents. So it is our role here that we counsel the parents how they can cope with the situation. And we have to remind people to seek emergency care immediately if any such indication is there. If child is having any danger signs, then certainly they have to seek the emergency care. So these are the sources for this lecture, and thank you very much for your patience listening. Please like and share the video. Thank you so much.